we can get started.
Thank you, sir. And good evening, and welcome to the 2018 Washtenaw County Green Party Statewide Candidates Forum. I'm your host, Mr. Clyde Shabazz, and tonight our distinguished panelists are with us, and they'll be asked to speak for a maximum of 2 minutes on each topic. First, there will be a quiet buzzer sound, and you will have 15 seconds to wrap up your answers, followed by a stop call from the timer at 20 seconds. But before we get started, I'd like to go down the line, and each of you just announce your names before we get started. Starting to my left.
I'm Todd Schleiger.
Hello, I'm Evan Space.
Hi, I'm Bill Cobbs.
I'm John Tatar.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Kurland.
I am Marcia Squier.
Thank you so much. And we can delve right into it. Tonight we have the U.S. Taxpayers, we have the Democratic Party, we have the Libertarian Party, and we have the Green Party represented here tonight. And we have a good audience here, and you viewing in the internet and online, we'll be happy to have you join us. So we'll jump right in. Introductions?
Yeah, make it 2 minutes to introduce themselves.
2 minutes, sir.
I'm Todd Schleiger. I've been in the transportation industry for 35 plus years. I have 7 wonderful kids, and I'm a son of Flint, which is what brought me into the race for governor.
2 minutes. Okay.
Good. Hello, my name is Evan Space, and I am a former Republican gubernatorial candidate, now seeking the nomination from the U.S. Taxpayers Party. I've been a small business owner for the last 18 years, a U.S. military veteran, and a blue-collar worker, gaining support of Michigan and understanding the voices of what we need to be able to change our economy for the better. That is why I'm here today.
Hi, I'm Bill Cobbs, and I'm running for governor because like everybody here, I know that we can be doing a lot better than we're doing right now. You know, I'm a native son of Michigan, and I know what Michiganders can do when we work together. I graduated from high school in Detroit in 1970. And when I did, I enrolled in the University of Michigan. Now, my folks were working class people, so we only had enough money for me to go to UM for a year. When that year was up, I enlisted in the United States Navy. While in the Navy, I was fortunate enough to be selected for the Navy Boost Program, broaden opportunities for officer selection and training. That program gave me an opportunity to either go to the Naval Academy to complete my education or return to U of M. I chose to return to U of M. Once I had completed my education, I returned to Naval Service as an officer. When I finished my Naval Service, I had gotten admitted to law school at Wayne State University, came home and became a Detroit cop while I was in law school. When I finished, I went to work for Xerox, where over the course of my career, I eventually became the Global Vice President for Public Sector, with responsibility for the U.S., Canada, Latin America, and Europe. Now, one of the things that I always tell folks is that U of M was great for me because I met the woman I was to marry there, and we've been a team for the last 38 years. I've got 2 adult children, Will and Brooke, and a very precocious 4-year-old granddaughter, Kennedy. And it's important to me that we create an environment here in Michigan where every child, no matter what zip code they come from, has the same opportunity for a good life.
Hi, I'm John Tatar, retired Lieutenant Colonel, veteran in the Desert Storm. And during that particular period of time, I was commander and XO and staff officer as well as instructor in the military. Served the Desert Storm, but not in country, actually served at Fort Sam Houston, where I helped redesign the medical forces so they could move quicker with the 7th Corps in combat. During my teaching career, I taught school at Livonia Public Schools for 31 years. I taught kids how to build houses. We built 15 homes in the city of Livonia with high school students. They built the home from the ground up. We actually had a piece of vacant land where we did the surveying and then built the house from that point on, and the kids did all of the construction of that house. The plumbing, heating, electrical, roofing, carpentry, finished carpentry, and so on and so forth. I also taught American history and government at Stevenson High School and several other courses during that time period. I have a son presently who's a major in the Air Force, and he's up for colonel. He should be being promoted or boarded sometime in the end of the summer. I have a daughter who's got a PhD, and she teaches anatomy to the doctors at Michigan Tech.
Hello, everyone. I am Jennifer Kurland. I am the Green Party candidate for governor. I'm born and raised in Michigan. Both of my parents are union. My dad was a sheet metal worker, UAW. My mom was a teacher, MEA. So when we talk about the issue in Michigan of our blue-collar workers, those are my parents. I currently live in Redford. I have a background in environmental activism. I worked for Clean Water Action for 3 years when I was 19, so I've been involved in Michigan politics ever since I could vote. I've worked as an elections chairperson for elections in Redford and run our precincts for the past decade. I have over a decade's experience in finance, and I also currently serve on the Redford Union School Board. I was elected in 2012 to serve my local community, and I have been serving, and we have been working to do sustainable, systemic change in our school district to make sure that our kids in a blue-collar area with a high poverty rate have the ability to get equitable education. So my background and everything that I have done is also kind of ties into Flint. So I've been on the ground in Flint since the beginning of 2016. I researched and created a documentary on the Flint water crisis, and I have been pushing and fighting for the people of Flint ever since the crisis grew.
Hi, my name is Marcia Squier. I'm running for U.S. Senate here in Michigan. I do want to thank the Green Party for hosting this event today, and also thank them for making me their nominee for U.S. Senate. I am 43 years old. I'm a mom of 4 kids. I work part-time as a teacher. I teach gymnastics, ballet, karate, cheer, all kinds of different exercise programs to kids. And I also teach adults as well at a local gym. I'm running for U.S. Senate because it is my firm belief that we need to be of, by, and for the people at every level of government, all the way to Washington, D.C. So I am a citizen candidate, and I'm just a regular person who feels that we're not being represented in Washington, D.C. because of the corporate control, the corporate chokehold that the mega corporations have on our government. And so I am very disillusioned with my current senator and the way that she votes and the acts that and the bills that she writes. And so I'm running against Debbie Stabenow because I feel that she does not represent the people. She was invited to attend tonight. She didn't come, and so were the Republican candidates as well. Sandy Pensler and John James, I think, ignored the request to attend this debate. So it just kind of shows me that they really aren't interested in admitting that third-party candidates exist out there. And I do appreciate that Bill Cobbs is here too, representing at least one person from the Democrat Party. That being said, I'm looking forward to tonight's forum.
Thank you for that. I'm going to start off tonight with a series of questions for each of you, and then we can go down the line, and then the same will apply with the 2-minute response time, and you'll get a closing tone and the like to respond or close out your questions, okay? And Ms. Squier, I'd like to keep it on the end with you. The first question, what is your position on family separation from the federal government with this current immigration crisis of babies being separated from their parents?
So I'm learning more about it. I'm still trying to figure out if these are families of undocumented immigrants that are being separated right now, or documented immigrants. It's kind of vague in the news about exactly who's being separated from their parents and their children. And I've heard different reports as well that maybe these kids are being tested to make sure that these are in fact their parents. We have, Michigan is number 2 in human trafficking. So, you know, that is a concern of mine. The immigration is also a concern of mine, but I think that the first thing we would need to do to address you know, the refugee crisis and the immigration crisis is that we need to stop arming and bombing the entire world. You know, we're the ones that created this crisis in the first place, and now it's come to our front door, and we need to fix it. And we need to fix it by stopping the cause. We can't just put a Band-Aid on this open flesh wound. We actually have to address the root cause of what started this in the first place. So I would definitely say we need to, you know, stop bombing, arming. You know, our #1 export is weaponry. And, you know, we're bombing all these countries without Congress's approval. And we just approved the largest military budget in the history of the earth ever, including Debbie Stabenow's yes vote on that. So, you know, I guess that answers that question.
Thank you. Next, candidate Kurland?
So same question on immigration?
Yes, the same question.
So obviously immigration in Michigan, when we talk about it on a state level, is slightly different from the federal issues. So we talk about things that we need to do in Michigan with immigration. The first thing that we need to really explore is what we can do to shorten the mileage as a border state. So right now it's 100 miles from the international border that ICE can actually come and just stop anyone at any time. When you look at Michigan, that means almost the entire state of Michigan is really under the jurisdiction of ICE. And I think that is a violation of our state's right to be able to self-police ourselves. And I believe that the border limit should be closer to something like 30 miles from the border rather than 100 miles from the border. So that's certainly something that we need to look at as a state and fight, #1, for our sovereignty as a state and our state's right to protect our own citizens rather than having federal control and a federal jurisdiction come in to almost our entire state and putting our citizens at risk. The second thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we are doing the right things to give cities who opt in to be a sanctuary city to be able to have their support and their protection. I'm not saying that the state should be designating those, I'm just saying, like, as a state, we need to make sure that we are, with the Green Party value of decentralization, that our local communities who choose to be sanctuary cities, that the state should not be interfering in that, and we need to make sure that we are also protecting those cities from ICE. And the other thing that we need to look at is we need to look at our citizens and Michigan residents who are currently under threat from ICE. There's a lot of people who currently are under threat from ICE who are legal citizens or who have been citizens of our state for 30 years. And we need to make sure that we are giving protection to those people as well.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor?
Part of the problem is that, according to the Constitution, and I'm very strong for the Constitution and the Republic, that's the form of government that we have in this country. We don't have a democracy, we have a republic. And in that republic, under the Constitution, the federal government is responsible for immigration. It's not something that the state of Michigan can deal with because it's not really part of the purview of the state of Michigan. With that said, I agree with not bombing other countries and creating immigration because they have no place to go, because their country is destroyed, because we have decided to go to war and destroy those countries. That problem needs to be resolved. We need to, again, go back to the original intent of the Constitution, where if we're going to go into a country and we're going to try to occupy it or bomb it or do whatever, try to change their form of government, we have to have congressional approval. That is part of the federal government and the federal Constitution. Up to now, it's the president who decided that if he wants to go in and bomb a country, he can get away with that. That has to change. That is the biggest problem that we have, because if we don't create a problem where people have to run from their country because they want to run to safety, and most people don't want to be involved in the war and the battle and so on and so forth. If we can avoid that nonsense, then we will not have an immigration issue. And people can come in legitimately through the borders properly and be vetted properly and come in our country and become good citizens in our country, rather than just being a dumping spot for those people that are just trying to get away from the bombs and the bullets.
Thank you. Mr. Cobbs?
I'm going to approach this from a different perspective. You know, when we had our last presidential election, this "Make America Great Again" slogan became the way of sending out subliminal messages to people in this country who didn't appreciate the diversity that has made this nation possible. Now, everyone has talked about the fact that, you know, at the state level, we don't have the opportunity to impact that, but what we can do at the state level is create a welcoming environment. And the one thing that I absolutely know with certainty is that unless you are a Native American, you are an immigrant or the offspring or ancestor of an immigrant. And what has consistently been the backbone of what this country was all about is people coming to these shores, looking for a better opportunity and finding it in America. And we've got a fundamental decision to make about the kind of country that we want to be. Because the thing that I understand about this attack that we have going on right now regarding immigration policy is it's basically designed to keep people of color and people that don't conform to the image that we believe is the American image out of America. And until we're prepared to honestly have that discussion and talk about the fact that that's what this immigration attack is all about, we won't be able to take the kind of steps we need to be taking to make sure that as we formulate a comprehensive immigration policy, we aren't doing it with the idea in mind of keeping certain people out, people that look like me.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Space?
Well, immigration in our country has existed from the day of our very birth. And as the state of Michigan, we are a part of that. We are part of a big, giant melting pot. And I must say, by all this panel of different candidates we have seen here, they gave some excellent answers and great insight to where we're at right now with immigration. Yes, Jennifer is absolutely right. Having the borders come all the way into Michigan can resolve a bit of an issue when we have such a good law enforcement already in place at this moment. I also have to say, though, that Mr. Tatar does bring up a point. It is at a federal level. But at what point do we be able to decide between both of these to find that medium that is workable for us all? We have a lot of people in Michigan that here come to work and be a part of this great state. By doing so, they come and do jobs that we don't want to do. Most of the time, they are in areas of the farming and the agricultural industry. But it's important for us to know that these kids all are getting separated from their families and everything like that. We have to have accountability, whether or not they are part of those families that are being separated. That's why we need to be able to make sure that these families don't get separated. That's why we need to be able to make sure that we're strong and not create sanctuary cities in the state of Michigan. Michigan sanctuary cities would not be a good fall for us, because then we won't be able to have the accountability that we need for all the people here in the state. We need to be able to make sure that everybody that immigrates in and makes this melting pot that we have here a most beneficial factor for us all is the true greatness of where we should stand as Michiganders and where we're heading with everything towards tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schleiger?
There's a lot of good answers that came from the panelists here, and that's true. I mean, I'm totally for legal immigration. I don't believe in sanctuary cities. That is something that I think would deteriorate our great state. The facts that we need to work with the federal government on it is truthful. They are the ones that are in charge of immigration. We have no say on that immigration. And Mr. Cobb's statement that we all come from immigrants is true, but the majority of us that have come from them lines of lineage, we came to the United States legally. We didn't just cross a border and hoping for the best. I mean, we are a country of laws. and we need to stand by those laws. We have plenty of laws on the books that protect us and would protect legal immigration. I just don't believe in sanctuary cities. I believe our governors and our law enforcement should enforce the laws that are on the books. It's that simple to me.
Thank you. I want to go to another issue. It's national in scope, but it does affect our great state in the fact that it's becoming a big cost to state governments, and it's something that needs to be addressed at the federal and state level. And I'll start with you, Candidate Squier, on the end. Are you for or against national single-payer health care? And if you are for or against, explain your position.
I am for universal health care, also sometimes called single-payer health care. I believe that in this day and age that we should be able to take care of ourselves, and too many people are going bankrupt because of an illness. I myself can't even go to the dentist because I work part-time, I have no insurance, and I have no money to go to the dentist. You know, so I would love to see us cut our military spending in half, and that would generously afford universal health care and education for all, and internet for all too. We could pretty much have it all if we quit killing people overseas, you know, and you know, and that would be better for them and their health too, obviously, you know, but we leave, you know, radioactive missiles behind and other things like that. So I think, you know, healing begins at home, and we need to take better care of ourselves. We need to be the best, healthiest, most educated people that we can be.
Thank you, ma'am. Candidate Kurland.
Absolutely. I've actually been doing research on how we can create a single-payer system here in Michigan. I think that it's imperative, not just when it comes to people's health, but also economically. Because when we look at the health in the state of Michigan, we are suffering as people. Michigan has a 40% poverty rate. And those people, many of those people who live in poverty in the state of Michigan do not have access to health care. And as a state, we are also lacking in preventative care. And so a single payer system is the only way that we can ensure that our health care gets cheaper, even if you want to look at it from an economic standpoint. When we have preventative care, we are going to have healthier citizens, and we are going to have children that have healthy parents. Because in Michigan we have My Child, and we also have the Medicaid and Medicare expansions from the ACA. So in order to create a true single-payer system that would include dental, like Marcia said, as well as vision, as well as mental health care, there is certainly a way that we can make that happen so that it's cheaper for everyone in Michigan to afford health care on a single-payer plan, and also making sure that we as a society are healthy and we are taking care of our neighbors. I think that it is imperative, and that a single-payer health care plan is the only way to go when we talk about health insurance and health care.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Tatar?
I
Mr. Taylor,
have,
I apologize.
do I look like a hockey player?
That's what I was thinking. Thank you, sir.
I have to disagree with the other two candidates. I don't believe that a single-payer health care will work for two reasons. The one biggest reason is who's going to decide what health care you should be getting and what health care you shouldn't be getting. And at what age should you get it, and at what age should you not get it? The other side of that coin is I believe that we do not have a fair market and a free market healthcare system. People can't go wherever they want to and buy the type of healthcare that they want across the country. They're locked into a certain situation. Also, big pharma, the AMA, and all of the other corporations that are running the healthcare system right now have a monopoly on the system. You can't go to somebody that's that might be considered a holistic doctor, or somebody that might be into naturopath medicines, because the system doesn't allow it. They want you to go to the MD or the DO or the dentist that's qualified by the school systems. And these school systems have been set up for years to teach a particular direction as to how the medical profession should operate. They do not, we now have light therapy, we have sound therapy. There's a sound therapist out of Ohio that talks about how she can hear your voice and decide what minerals or vitamins you might be missing. She's available for people, but she can't be used with the medical insurances that are out there. So the problem is that it's not a free market system, and there's no competition in the medical profession at this point.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cobbs?
I do believe in the concept of single payer, but I'm going to put some qualifiers around it. You know, we have a state budget in Michigan of approximately $57 billion. Now, one of the things that we've done is we've looked at what it would cost to implement single payer in Michigan. We'd have to raise an incremental $35 billion to do that. Now, anybody who can show me how to do that, I will commit that we will implement it from day one. But at the end of the day, we got to be able to pay for all of the programs that we say that we want. That's critical. Now, as governor, I'm going to be part of the Council of Governors. And you better believe that I'm going to be lobbying those 49 other governors to make sure that our voices are heard in Washington, D.C. Because here's the thing, implementing single payer at the state level is problematic because of the fact that if you look around this country, you look at the states that have tried it, like California, like Vermont, none of them have been successful because of the massive cost that it has shown itself to generate. So if we can't do it at the federal level, I don't know how anybody expects that we can do it successfully at the state level. I'm committed to trying to move towards that, but in the meantime, I'm going to do everything that is within my power to expand Healthy Michigan so that we don't allow any Michigan citizen to fall through the cracks. I'm going to fight vigorously to make sure that at the federal level, we don't do anything to further diminish the impact of ACA, and to make sure that we're providing a healthcare safety net for everybody in the state. That's the most important job that I think that the next governor of Michigan is going to have.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Spinks?
A universal health care program would be nice for the state of Michigan to have, but the thing we have to look about is exactly what kind of insurance are we working with here, and what kind of programs are being offered to everyone. That's why I think that we need to have another option available for us. If we're going to be able to say that you're going to be sick and you need the insurance, but the insurance doesn't cover certain things on their policies for them, then you're not going to be able to be fixed by going to the doctors. That's why it's important for us to be able to come together and work and create a healthcare program that would be an option that is reasonable for all of Michigan and that everybody has the equal chance of being able to have. It's not going to be just fixed overnight, and I do have to agree with Mr. Cobbs is that if it doesn't work on a federal level, it's not going to work on a state level. We need to be able to find something that's going to work on a state level and is going to also work with the federal level as well. That's why it's important for us to be able to know that just choosing one type of healthcare program out there and be able to say it will work for everyone isn't the suitable answer. But the suitable answer for us to be able to look at is to be able to develop a healthcare program that has options. The options so you know that you will be able to be taken care of by any good resources of having doctors out there. Just because they don't take a certain type of healthcare program, that should not be an option here in Michigan. That's why I want to see every Michigander here be healthy and strong for tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schleiger?
All right. I kind of agree with some of yous and disagree with others. I've done a lot of research on the healthcare system here in Michigan, and we do have a system in place that we could bring right into full effect. I have spoke to Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I told them that they had to drop their premiums and their deductibles by 50%. They laughed at me. Well, they made nearly $80 billion profit last year. I didn't ask them to go broke. I asked them to cut their profits by 50%. By opening Medicaid to the people of the state of Michigan at the 50% rate between $600 and $700 for a family of 4, that brings in mental health, because Medicaid has the best mental health insurance out of all the insurance companies. That opens up dental, brings it right under the same umbrella, brings in vision and your health insurance. That is actually affordable compared to what we have currently. If the state opens up Medicaid to the people of Michigan at that 50% mark, that'll cause Blue Cross Blue Shield, Humana, Cigna, and all them to compete with the state. We already have the fee schedule in place. The Medicaid fee schedule is actually the lowest cost health insurance that we have. It's even lower than Medicare. The state should be responsible for the health care of its citizens, not the federal government. Yes, it would be great to have, I'm all for a single payer system, but I think the state should take care of it, not the federal government. I think the state of Michigan, by implementing this process, the federal government and other governors would look at us and say, hey, there's a plan that's working. Everybody would have the option to have insurance, and that $40 billion profit margin that we would be generating would also go to help cover the other portion of the actual welfare portion of that Medicaid, which the federal government is currently helping.
Thank you all for that round of questioning. I want to pivot to another important issue that's been in the headlines here in Michigan. In the wake of the Flint disaster, many communities have discovered that we have high levels of contaminants in our drinking water. My question to you candidates is, how would you address this issue in terms of making sure that this water crisis that we have here doesn't affect other communities and to raise the standard of the drinking water? I'll start again on you, candidate Squires.
Okay, great. I did want to mention real quick one last thing. In order to go along with universal health care, we need to end the prohibition of cannabis, and that would help the health care costs go down immensely. And on to the water issue. I believe that we need infrastructure in terms of the water pipes. They're the ones with the lead in them that's leaching into our water system. It's not the actual water itself. So we need our pipes to be replaced, not just coated with more chemicals. And I have a jobs program that I'm a big proponent of, which is called #HIRE, which is healthcare, infrastructure, renewables, and education. I think we could do well to focus on all 4 of those areas. If we're going to have universal health care, we need more healthcare providers. We don't need more health insurance companies. I want to cut out that middleman. We need infrastructure. We need more people in the skilled trades to be able to replace those pipes. And renewable energy as well, and education. If we're going to have education for all, we need more educators. So I'm a firm believer in education for all, so that we can have the workforce that is necessary to do all those infrastructure improvements, including replacing our pipes.
Thank you. Candidate Kurland.
So this is in my background. Anything water issues, I've been working and following in the state of Michigan for over 15 years. So there's a couple points. So number one, the issue of Flint. We need to fix Flint and declare Flint a disaster area, make sure that the National Guard is able to set up water pods, and until every single pipe is replaced in the entire city of Flint, they should have access to clean, safe drinking water through water pods rather than just living on water bottles. That should be unacceptable to every single person in the entire state of Michigan, no matter what your political affiliation, that the people of Flint still today do not have access to clean, safe drinking water. This issue of lead in our water is not the only issue in our water. So if you go to my website, which is www.kurland, K-U-R-L-A-N-D, 4michigan.com, so it's the number 4, and /Flint, you'll see all of my plan on Flint and all of the information that I've researched that shows the state is culpable in the Flint water crisis, and it was caused by both Republicans and Democrats. The second thing when we talk about water issues, so right now in Metro Detroit we have a Legionnaires outbreak. We have another Legionnaires warning in Genesee County again. And we have a hepatitis A outbreak currently in Metro Detroit. So we can't talk about water issues without also mentioning water shutoffs. And the fact that water shutoffs are creating public health hazards. And the reason why we even have water and sewer systems in the first place is for public health. So that people weren't just dumping from their toilets when we didn't have indoor plumbing onto the streets. Like, that is the reason why we have water and sewer systems in the first place. So we need to make sure that we are fixing our water and sewer pipes. All of our water and sewer infrastructure, except for the city of Lansing, is at least over 50 years old in almost the entire state. We know that the way chlorine interacts with lead and iron, the chlorine attacks the metal that's leaching rather than the bacteria. So even just putting chlorine into our pipes is not a solution. We need to completely replace all of our pipes across the entire state, and we need to make sure that we're upgrading all of our water treatment plants as well.
Thank you. Mr. Tatar.
The water problem has been a problem in my estimation back 40 years ago. Thus, I was singing pollution songs to my kids when I was teaching school back 40 years ago. Because we had pollution of all different other things, just not only lead, but other chemicals that were leaching into the water because of our chemical companies that are working in the state. A lot of the damage that's gone on in the water system right now is the pharmaceutical stuff being flushed down the toilets, the chemical companies still dumping their toxic waste, and of course we're shipping it in from Canada. We need more toxic waste in Michigan. I'm being facetious about that in case you didn't figure that out. The problem is that we need to stop the infiltration of the toxic chemicals into the water system. Yes, the infrastructure has been destroyed, and it's been destroyed over years. They haven't done anything with it over the years. That has to be done, and you know, it's house maintenance. This is the job of the governor and the job of the House of Representatives is to maintain the House, which is the state of Michigan, all throughout the years, not wait until it comes to a crisis situation. Now the price tag is extremely ridiculous. But if we were maintaining this over time, we would not have the price tag we have today. What we have to do is start rebuilding and then continue to maintain it afterwards. I'm convinced that Lansing has the money. They've been wasting money for years. They've been always crying, we never have enough money to do anything. Yet if you drive through Lansing and look at the buildings and the way that those people in Lansing live, they don't live like the servants that they're supposed to be. They live like we're the servants for them. So we need to change the philosophy of what's going on with the Lansing people and the Republic.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cobbs?
So let's start with Flint. You know, there's no question that the behavior that Rick Snyder and Bill Schuette have displayed towards the city of Flint is criminal. But beyond that, there's some basic things that we as citizens have got to recognize. You know, we have a governor that talks about his $1 billion rainy day fund. And if Flint is not a rainy day, we will never have one. So as the next governor of the state, I've said that if we need to spend every penny of that rainy day fund to restore normalcy to the city of Flint, we're going to do that. I've also said that it's important that we not just focus on one city, but we recognize that every single city in the state is the next Flint. Flint was a canary in the coal mine, but if we don't implement a statewide infrastructure replacement program that goes from one side of the state to the other, immediately we're going to see more tragedies like that. So as the next governor for the state of Michigan, I've proposed a $60 billion infrastructure plan. By doing that, we can really begin to attack our infrastructure issues in terms of our water and sewage systems, as well as our roads. Now, here's the thing that nobody talks about, but is really critical for us to think about. We've got a 40+% rate of poverty in the state of Michigan. By implementing that infrastructure replacement program, we'll create jobs that will last for the next 25 to 30 years. We'll have the opportunity to put any citizen in the state of Michigan who wants to work in a job, paying at least $17.50 an hour. We have the opportunity to take people out of poverty and create the thing that drives the economy. See, we have this false notion that big business is what drives the economy. There's only one thing that ever drives the economy, folks. That is the ability of ordinary people to be consumers, to be able to think about purchasing things other than a roof over their head and food on their table. That's what we've got to be about if we're serious about it, making sure that these lead issues, that these chemical issues in our water and sewage systems don't become an epidemic.
Thank you. Mr. Spinks?
We live in one of the largest freshwater resources in the world. That's Michigan. All the Great Lakes surrounding us, they can't be replaced once they're gone. Starting with the water system in Flint and how it was tainted, that cannot be fixed just on a quick day basis. We need to look at what caused the problem and learn from our mistakes. Why did we do this? What happened? And what could we have done to make it not happen again? I remember growing up that I was in a small little town with a shoe factory that used to have pollutants come through the rivers. And you could smell the tannery. But the one thing I learned that they have done since then is they've improved themselves environmentally and the quality and improving the fresh water that they have through those rivers to this day. Everything I see in the state of Michigan is all one big domino. From one thing to another, it will affect. This is why we need to know about Flint and what the cause is. We can also take fresh water and bring it in, just like Kurland said. These water buffaloes could be a good resource for the National Guard. I do think that is a reasonable request. Until our cities are back on our feet, these cities need to be considered natural disaster zones. We just had one happen up in Hancock for flooding of their roads, and now everything's been washed away. It's not just one part of Michigan that needs concentration, but it's all of Michigan. That's why we also need to put in a fresh water pipeline that goes directly from our Great Lakes system right into Flint, so that they can be able to have the fresh water there and be able to have the filtration system set in place. And for all the homes that cannot be replaced, we need to be able to figure out what the solution is for that. Whether we keep the homes or we get rid of the homes. Then we need to be able to find out if we can get plumbers in and anybody else is willing to be able to fix these problems by giving them tax rebates on being able to come in and help fix the system in the state of Michigan.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schleiger?
All right, I'm the only candidate in this entire race that is actually a son of Flint. Flint is what brought me into this race. Michigan is surrounded, like some of the candidates have said, by water. We have 20%, maybe 22% of the fresh water in the world. There should be no excuse for Michigan having tainted water. Governor Schneider turned down, well, I shouldn't say Governor Schneider. The state legislature and the administration of Rick Schneider turned down a $60 million donation from a PVC company in California that offered to help replace these pipes. During that time, there were over 50 plumbing companies willing to volunteer their time to help replace these lines. The state of Michigan and his administration, and I don't mean just the Republican, I'm also talking about the Democratic administration as well. Both parties are responsible for what's going on in Flint. Okay, so is the city of Flint. But again, it's the major two parties that have failed the people of Michigan. We need to stop the bipartisan bickering and going through and actually get somebody in there who's going to do what they say they're going to do. It isn't a matter of if the lines need to be replaced. They have to be replaced. We need to go through Michigan. The infrastructure needs to be updated. Bill said, I believe it was Bill said, we're 40 years behind. We're actually 75 years behind on our infrastructure. I do not include our roads in our infrastructure for the simple reason we have a tax designed just for our roads. If we can keep the two parties' hands out of that as a general slush fund, we could have our roads in better shape than any other state in this country. We are one of the highest tax states in this country, but yet we are failing the people. Under my administration, we will not fail the people. We will work together with the Democrats and the Republicans, and yes, the independents and the minor parties as well. It's time to stop playing the games with the people's lives here in family, or in Michigan. The families need to thrive, and the only way we're going to do it is if we start.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all for that round of questions. What we're going to do now, we're going to get into what we consider a rapid fire round of questions where you still have your 2 minutes, but instead of addressing one issue, I'm going to give you 2 issues, okay? Starting with you, candidate Squires. What's your position or proposal on equally funding all of Michigan's K-12 schools? And what is your position or proposal on legalizing marijuana in the state of Michigan?
So I think that we currently have a bit of a backwards system where the lower income neighborhoods receive less funding for schools, and the higher income neighborhoods receive more funding for schools, with the parents who can literally afford to help with their kids' education. So we need to, at the very least, make that equal, if not flip it, for a good 5-10 years so that the lower income schools can catch up. And I would include pre-K as well with that. And then for cannabis, marijuana is not the word I like to use anymore. Cannabis is the medical term. I am definitely for legalized cannabis, including prescriptions as well as what I like to call preventative use as opposed to recreational use.
Thank you. Candidate Kurland?
So I'm going to start with marijuana and then I'm going to move to education. So absolutely we need to legalize marijuana for recreational use and tax it as such. And we also need to make sure that when we do so, we keep medicinal marijuana separate. It's really important that we start doing more research on medicinal marijuana so that when patients are prescribed marijuana, they are not the ones who have to then go to a dispensary and figure out what strain is going to work best for their ailment. We need to make sure that we put funding into our medical system so that we can produce medical botanists who can make sure that we know exactly what's going to be happening within the medicinal marijuana field. We also need to take advantage, once we legalize marijuana recreationally, to start using hemp as a crop and using our agricultural spaces to start growing industrial hemp. And industrial hemp can be used in so many different things. One of the things it can actually be used for is also concrete, which may be something that we can use to fix some of these issues within our roads by having a new, innovative, breathable concrete. That might be something that would be a really good plan for us here in Michigan. Now with public education, I currently serve on the Redford Union School Board. I was elected in 2012 to serve on a 6-year term from 2013 until this year. Our school district was under threat of emergency management when I was elected. We were in deficit. Our teachers took an 11% pay cut for 2 years. Finally, just now, they were able, in our last contract, to be made whole. We're now working and getting grants to fund technology in our classrooms because we do not fund technology in our classrooms. We do not fund pre-K, we do not fund curriculum. We are one of only 5 states in the entire country that does not fund infrastructure improvements, which makes local communities have to go through sinking funds and millages in order to put roofs on their schools. And that's shameful because the state treasury department is actually the one that controls if you can do so, and that is still based on property taxes, even though we have Proposal A, which was supposed to make schools equitable off of property taxes. And in Redford, there are 3 school districts in Redford, and my school district has the least amount of money per student in the same city.
Thank you, candidate. Mr. Tatar, sir.
The word marijuana comes from Mexico, and if you go back and look up the history of cannabis and hemp, you will find that the 4 major corporations, the oil company, the pharmaceutical company, the textile company, and the paper companies, did not want hemp to be used against the oil industry because they wanted to bring in their products. So, and the American people were using cannabis all along up to that time. They couldn't use the word cannabis to get people to say it was a bad thing for the people and it would create all kinds of other problems. So they had to come up with a name. So they came up with marijuana, which was derived from Mexico. So marijuana is really a very inappropriate name to be using for the legalization of a product, hemp, that we have, and cannabis, that we have allowed use before the corporations got involved and tried to switch this on us. I am absolutely for legalizing, decriminalizing cannabis, and for bringing hemp back as a major industry to the agricultural industry of Michigan. Going to the school side, I taught school for 31 years and watched the hands-on programs such as the industrial arts programs, the welding programs, the sheet metal programs disappear. And the logic that the school systems were handing me, because I was an industrial arts teacher at the time, was they didn't want the liability, which was a load of baloney. They sold off a lot of tools, a lot of machinery that the school systems had that were able to teach the kids the hands-on program. I'm telling you right now that the home construction program was one of the best programs ever devised and allowed to be in the city of Livonia, because the kids that couldn't handle a pencil could really handle a hammer.
Thank you. Candidate Cobbs.
You can't attack the issue of poverty in Michigan if you aren't willing to make the right investments in public pre-K through 12 education. You know, we have a state educational budget of about $12.2 billion today. One of the really glaring issues that we face is that Proposal A is something that we need to bury. It doesn't work. It's not delivering the kind of resources we need to provide fundamental educational opportunities for all of our kids. Because one of the things that most people don't understand is we've got 540 school districts in this state. 50 of those school districts are what are called hold harmless districts, which means that they're able to raise additional funds locally to input in their schools. So you have these huge disparities between communities. If you take the city of Detroit, where the per student funding is about $8,100, and you look at a community like Bloomfield Hills, there's a $10,000 delta in what they're spending per student and what Detroit is spending. So you can't say that you want the same kind of educational outcomes if you aren't providing the same resources. I've said as the next governor of the state, we're going to change that. We're going to fund every single student in this state to the tune of at least $11,500, because we're already underfunding them by thousands of dollars. Second thing is that I can't outlaw charter schools, but I can defund them. We're not going to take public tax dollars and use those to put into the pockets of profiteers. And that's what charter schools are today. You know. Now, let's talk about marijuana. Let's talk about cannabis. Now, I was a former law enforcement officer, and I saw people's lives be destroyed because they participated in using recreational marijuana. So I absolutely support the legalization of marijuana. I'm concerned, though, and the thing that has me concerned is that there are a lot of folks who see this as being something that's going to provide a lot of economic opportunity. And one of the things that we should all be paying attention to is right now, folks that were providing medical marijuana are being put out of business because of the regulations that the state has put in place to make sure that they create an opportunity for big business, not small entrepreneurs.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Space?
Education is truly one of my biggest beliefs here in the state of Michigan for all of our children growing up. That's where we start from, and that's where we move ourselves forward to where we're going to be in life. These things are not fairly balanced with the districts and where the funding is coming from. We need to be able to make sure that the equality of the funding between all the districts is dispersed at a more equal and fair rate. Now, having that you go from a rural area, you're going to lose a lot of amount of the funds. And if you go into the cities, you're going to have less of the funds. It's the certain areas that they decide to designate to be able to improve the amount of quality that they have available for the school systems. That's why our children are important for us to know that wherever they go, the education they receive will be just as fair and equally balanced so we can be able to have a fair opportunity for all of our future. That is why the MI legalized movement as well is also pushing for the taxes that are coming in at about 35% of it to go towards the education system. The other 35% will go towards the roads and constructions, and the other 30% will go into the communities. It's important for us to know that the ongoing legalization of marijuana should happen. The prohibition should end. Canada has now made it legal, and now it's time for the United States to step up. It's time for Michigan to show the legalization and the responsibility behind having a movement. These are the things that we have to look at. Michigan needs to become an agricultural boom. That's why I want to grow it like corn. I want to be able to see the industrial hemp farming happen for the state. As Jennifer Kurland has said, we have many uses for it that are for materials that we can be able to develop. That's why I want to be able to decriminalize people who have been with past charges on their records that have no other violent tendencies or anything like that. That's why I want to be able to make sure that we have fairness for post-traumatic stress disorders for soldiers in the military, so they're not going to be able to be shunned from having another option. These are things that I stand for in being able to move forward.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Schleiger?
I also believe I'm the only candidate that has actually put a budget forward for the public school system. Again, I'm not for the charter schools. I don't believe in profiting off our children, so no tax dollars will go to charter schools. We will also cut the tax dollars that go to private schools. The $20 billion that I set up for our school budget is to make sure that the minimum pay that our teachers receive is $60,000 to start. Not as a medium wage, but to start, because our teachers are underpaid here in Michigan. I also have $1.2 billion out of that $20 billion set up to bring 2 years of community college within to the public school realm, because I believe we need to give our kids a bigger step up to educate them for what's coming in the future. I don't believe in Common Core. I think that hampers our teachers' abilities to teach our kids. All our children learn at different rates and different methods. I believe in the STEM or STEAM program, the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Those are the classes that are going to move our kids forward into the future, not Common Core. Now, as far as legalization of marijuana, I am 100% for the legalization of marijuana. Wall Street has predicted that when Michigan legalizes, that'll be $7.2 billion in sales, which translates into a lot of money for the tax dollars for our state. I always keep our roads separate because our roads have their own gas tax in order to fund our safety of our roads and bridges. I do not include that in our infrastructure because, again, they have their own separate taxes in order to provide for the safety. Again, if we can keep our state's fingers out of those gas tax and diesel tax, we wouldn't have issues with our roads. The jobs that will be created from the legalization of marijuana are predicted to be between 75 and 100,000 new jobs within the first 4 years. You got the growers, you got the transporters, you got the banking industry that we need to open up for the state of Michigan.
Thank you so much. You all are doing a great job on this rapid fire round, and in keeping with that, I just got a message. We got a little more time, so I want to keep it on the rapid fire pace that we're on. So again, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then you can respond within your 2-minute time frame, okay? All right, to you, candidate Squires. Here's my question, bear with me. What is your position on fracking in Michigan and the construction of more oil and natural gas pipelines in Michigan? And what is your position on renewables like solar, wind, and renewables? Also, women make up currently 51% of Michigan's population, and with less than 10% of Michigan State's police force are women. What would you do to diversify the police force or public safety?
Okay, so fossil fuels versus renewables.
And fracking.
And fracking. I am against fracking, and I do support the ban fracking petition that is being circulated right now here in Michigan to ban fracking in the state of Michigan. I'd like to ban it in the entire country. It's causing earthquakes, it's causing poisoned water, and we definitely need to ban fracking. And as far as pipelines, oil pipelines, we need to shut down Line 5. And unlike my opponent, Debbie Stabenow, I don't want a replacement line. I want no replacement lines going through the Straits of Mackinac. Like it was said earlier, you know, we have about a fifth of the entire world's fresh water. So there's no reason we should have an oil pipeline going through the fresh water of the Great Lakes. None at all. And so the second question was?
Second question related to the few number of females in law enforcement in the state.
Okay, so if we retroactively legalize cannabis and let all those people out of jail and pardon all those records, we won't need as much law enforcement that we have right now because of the war on drugs. You know, we would need less cops altogether. You know, I just heard earlier on the way here that Detroit cops are leaving at a rate of 3 or 4 per week, and they can't even replace and train them fast enough. You know, and then they were talking about forcing them to commit to 4 or 5 years like in the military, or maybe we could raise their pay and give them back some of their benefits. I think that has a lot to do with it, that they took a lot of pay cuts and a lot of benefit cuts. So, you know, we definitely need a smaller police force, but if we offered them better benefits, I think it would attract more women.
Thank you. Candidate Kurland.
So that's so many questions in 2 minutes. Okay, first, obviously, we need to ban fracking. Oklahoma is now the earthquake capital of our country because of fracking, of man-made fracking. Pennsylvania has a lot of groundwater contamination because of fracking. And in Michigan, we already have fracking, and we know what is currently happening in the areas where we are fracking in Michigan. So we must ban fracking. When we talk about this issue of pipelines, the Nexus pipeline is being used, eminent domain, for a corporate profit that is putting this natural gas pipeline too close to people's homes and elementary schools. And so we need to make sure that we are putting the public and the public interest ahead of corporate interest. And that is just a complete change of how we approach government and governance. We must shut down Line 5 and completely decommission Line 5. And not just Line 5, there's other, of course, there was the dielectric fluid that was hit by an anchor and leaked into the Straits of Mackinac. And so we need to make sure that we are moving completely over to 100% renewable energy. And with a Green New Deal, I think that is absolutely one of the things that we can do in Michigan. So when we empower local businesses to have additional tax credits for putting solar on their businesses, right now in Michigan we actually have a hindrance for businesses to be able to switch over to renewable energies. But in Michigan, we have tradespeople all across the board that we can put to work and really revamp our manufacturing sector and start manufacturing wind farms and start manufacturing solar panels and really look at the jobs of the future, and the jobs of the future are green. And that is certainly something that we can do here in Michigan, and it's necessary because climate change is real. And oh goodness, okay, so if you have any questions, I'm not even going to get into police and policing. We of course need to have more women serving in our local law enforcement. We need to switch over to a community policing model rather than the current policing model that we currently have. And on my website, www.kurlandformichigan.com/fireside chat, so you can see more detail on all of these positions too.
Thank you. Mr. Tatar.
Bringing hemp into as a major agricultural product will eliminate a lot of the nonsense that's going on with the oil companies. The oil companies not only produce oil to run the vehicles and heat the fuels, but to make plastics and all other forms of production that come out of the oil industry itself. That oil industry would shrink in size if hemp was a major crop in Michigan. That would take care of a lot of the problems that we would have with pollution, because hemp is not a pollutable item. As far as bringing more women into the police force. I don't know how you can force a woman to become a police officer if they don't want to. I think you can make it worthwhile for them to come into the police force and see if you can get them to want to do that as for a living. I'm still kind of a person that wants free market, and you are able to do anything you want because you live in a republic. You have the rights and the freedoms to choose the industry or the type of job that you want to do the rest of your life, and nobody has any authority to change that or to make you do one job or another. So that's something that would be, if it's profitable and if it's worthwhile to become a police officer for a woman to do so, she will do it. And otherwise, she can pick a different trade that she'd be interested in doing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cobbs.
So, as a candidate for governor, I've said that one of the things that I want to do is to implement a 5-year moratorium on fracking in Michigan so that we have an opportunity to really assess the damage done by fracking and make sure that we're not mortgaging the state's future for a very small profitability to private individuals. Second thing, this pipeline issue in Michigan is one that we have got to address. When Rover is completed, here's the thing that nobody's talking about. DTE will only be using 35% of the capacity of Rover. It doesn't make any sense that we're building pipelines where we're not even using the capacity, but we continue to build more and more and more of them. I've said as the governor of the state, I'm going to work with the next attorney general to immediately move to shut down Enbridge Line 5. This nonsense that the folks in the oil industry are spreading, that we need Enbridge Line 5 for Michigan is pure hokum. Less than 5% of the production that goes through Enbridge Line 5 ends up here in Michigan. We have other vehicles for replacing that. And to put the health and welfare of almost 10 million citizens at risk for oil that doesn't impact our state one iota is just silly. It doesn't make any sense. As far as women in law enforcement, what we've got to do is to make sure that women who are interested in doing that have a fair opportunity, that we're not implementing processes that discourage them from pursuing that as a vocation. Having been a police officer, I know that there are subtle things that happen during that process of recruiting and training that sometimes deter women from pursuing it because it's not a friendly environment. If we're serious about what the first line of the Michigan Constitution says, that government is at the will of the people, that it is for their equal benefit, security, and protection, then we got to be living that every single day.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Space.
As far as clean energy goes in Michigan, I am 100% behind the movement. I do believe that we need to be able to push forward and be able to find alternative resources outside of the fossil fuels that we have right now being out of our state. With fracking that we have going on is not good for the structural integrity of the land of which we walk on. We need to make sure that we stop the fracking issues that are going on and concentrate on issues that are important to us, like Pipeline 5. Pipeline 5 has shown that its integrity is weakening, and we need to not get rid of Pipeline 5, but we need to be able to develop a system where we can put in a tunnel that would be able to have Pipeline 5 on it so it could be fixed, and we could also be able to create a rail system that would go between the lower and upper peninsula for more increased transportation issues for the state of Michigan. At the same time, be able to give tax incentives to businesses to be able to have the extra renewable energy resources used in their facilities should be a bonus program that we should have going here in the state of Michigan. With the law enforcement going on with the females, I think it is important that we give an equal opportunity and also try to find a way to encourage more recruitment for females within the workforce. That's why, as somebody that's seen that the law enforcement in Michigan has room for improvement, it's time for us to be able to make that improvement happen now. These are the things that I believe that are strong for us on the fossil fuels and what I also believe on the law enforcement.
Thank you. Mr. Schleiger?
Well, right now we have two very large monopolies here in Michigan, Consumers Energy and DTE. I believe at one point we had what we called Public Works, that they decided that it was too expensive for the state to maintain. So they sold it to Consumers Energy. Well, that turned, anytime we've turned our prisons, we turned them over to third parties, they started costing us more money. This is what I want to do. I want to bring back the public works so that the people have something worth into the electrical grid with solar energy, with wind farms. You know, we need to invest in ourselves as well. So at the same time, we also send a message to DTE and Consumers Energy that the monopoly is over. It's the people who are going to be investing in our state as well. Now, as far as Enbridge is the common denominator between Line 5 and the Nexus pipeline. Okay, Line 5, you're right, we do not benefit nearly anything out of that line. We are a pass-through state for Canada. They could not get the permits to run through their own country, so they decided to come through Michigan. I think we benefit $400 a year from that pipeline for easement. That line needs to come out. As far as the tunnel, they have talked about tunneling, and then you got the other issue with that. They're talking about putting natural gas lines through that same tunnel. Now you got a bomb because it's sealed. And they're talking about bringing other utility lines through there. So static electricity with the oil passing through, if you get a leak, that's an issue. The line needs to be come out, that's it, plain and simple. Canada can route it through their country, let them do what they want with it. Michigan, we have no issues with it whatsoever. The water that we have here, we need to protect our environment.
Thank you so much. And I just want to reiterate, all of you candidates, we want to thank you again for your time and your patience in coming out, and we really appreciate that. And again, on behalf of the Washtenaw County Greens and the statewide candidate forum, you all have really shown yourselves tonight. And we want to close with the final question to you all. And again, I'll start with you, candidates Squier, and you'll have your 2 minutes. Just tell us briefly, why should voters vote for you, and how can they contact you?
So I am the only non-corporatist choice for U.S. Senate. I do not take any corporate money or super PAC money. I am a small money candidate intentionally. I'm trying very hard to get big money out of politics. So to me, it just is illogical to raise a lot of money in order to get big money out of politics. Same thing with joining the duopoly. Me personally, it doesn't make sense for me to join a corporation of corporatists that represent other corporations in order to take on those corporations. So I am an independent third party all the way. There is probably, there's 2 other choices in the Republicans and then the incumbent. So, there's not that many of us left down in this race. So if you want someone that's going to represent the people instead of the corporations, then I'm your obvious choice. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at marcia4senate@gmail.com. That's MARCIA, the number 4, senate@gmail.com. Or you can find me on Facebook at Marcia Squier for Senate, or my personal profile, Marcia Squier. I'm also on YouTube at Marcia Squier for U.S. Senate, Twitter at _Marcia, and a lot of my friends, if you have friends, we have mutual friends, you can always get in touch with them to get in touch with me, or through Facebook Messenger as well.
Thank you so much for that. Candidate Kurland.
So one of the things that people say and have been saying for many years about third-party candidates is they say if a third-party candidate has held office before and understands what it means to be an elected official, then we will look at that person as a candidate. And I am the only third-party candidate who has held elected office and currently holds elected office. And that is a huge piece of what we need to do and how we need to fight, because my school district would not still be standing today if I did not have to fight the duopoly for our very existence, alongside an omnipartisan board. And so working with other people, the only way to do so, the only way to make our state work is by putting Greens in office. And we only need 10 Greens in the state Senate and 12 Greens in the state House to break the majority from either party. And so we can do this, and I believe I am the best qualified candidate out of all of the candidates currently running for governor. I have a background in finance. I have a background in environmental water activism. I have my degree in political science. I understand policy, how policy is made. I understand economics, and I have a background in public education. And those are qualities that we need to have in a governor, and someone who is willing to do the work, someone who understands how to do the work, who has a background in doing that kind of work, and who will change our state for the better. You can contact my campaign at www.kurland, Kurland4Michigan.com. That's with the number 4. I have fireside chats that are on my website as well as on my YouTube channel. You can contact me through my Facebook, my Instagram, or via Twitter. All of my handles on those are /Kurland, Kurland4mi.com. So you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Kurland4mi.com, or you can email my campaign at info@Kurland4mi.com. And thank you so much to the Washtenaw County Greens for putting together this forum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tatar, sir.
If I don't thank you first, I'll forget to thank you, so thanks for having this forum. I'm running for governor because I'm tired of the two-party system, number one. Number two, this is the first time that there's going to be a runoff election at the primary for 3 different parties, Libertarians being one, since two of the Libertarians gathered the 15,000 signatures required in order to get onto the ballot. So I started this last year gathering 15. We actually gathered 18,800 signatures for me, myself and those people running around in yellow shirts. I have the background because I've taught the history of American history. I've taught government. I understand the constitutions, both of them. I understand the failings of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party not following the Constitution. They don't care about their oath of office. They don't even understand what their oath of office is. And that goes all the way up through the judicial system, which is also corrupt. We need to make a major overhaul here. And you know, if it's corrupt at the top, it's going to be corrupt at the bottom. I've been battling against Redford's judicial system for some time already, personally in court, fighting the court judges as well as the prosecutor as well as the ordinance officers. Those people are only revenue enhancement officers. They don't know justice. They've never had any idea what justice is all about. Anyway, my background is very strong. The fact of the matter is I taught kids. I'm a very patient person. I don't get too upset over too many different things. I have had the opportunity of being a commander in many different types of military situations where I can command. My website is johnjtatar.com. You can look me up and follow me along or pick up some literature from us. We'll be out and about.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cobbs.
So in the last 60 years, Michigan has had a Republican governor, 44 out of those 60 years. And all you got to do is pay attention to the direction the state has taken and know that it's time for a change. So when I speak to citizens, the one message that I deliver is that I don't care whether you're libertarian, whether you're green, whether you are tax, the most important thing that voters have got to think about in this election cycle is who can defeat Brian Calley or Bill Schuette. Thinking about anything else is truly frivolous. It can't be about who you like. It can't be about, who you're affiliated from a party standpoint. It's who can win this contest and begin the process of taking Michigan forward and turning it around. So here's what you need to know about me. I have been fortunate enough to live a life that I never expected to have. I understand adversity. I don't shy away from it. I don't run away from things because they're hard. If that were true, I wouldn't be sitting here today. I would have given up on this race. I never give up. And that's important for you to understand because that means I won't give up on you. I'm going to Lansing to do the people's business. I don't owe anybody anything, and I'm not going there to make friends. And I understand two things that most people don't get. If we had a governor that was focused on doing the people's business, we would never have had the emergency manager law in Michigan. We would never have had right to work because the governor has the biggest bully pulpit in the state. And they also have the power of the pen, and we haven't had anybody with the courage to use that for a very long time. So that's the thing that you need to think about as a voter come August the 7th and come November the 6th.
Mr. Space.
I want to say thank you to these gentlemen to my left for both of your service as well. We are the gubernatorial candidates that are military oriented. I myself am a recent person from the Michigan Army National Guard as a combat engineer. And I know what it's like to be able to help work with our system and our military soldiers and veterans alike outside in the benefits. That's why I'm also reaching out as somebody who has learned and educated through being a current student and soon to be a graduate of Grand Valley State University as a Bachelor of Science for Political Science. I have learned a lot through the years as somebody who has run a business for the last 18 years and the profession for the last 30 years. My family taught me well. That's why I'm raised up as an individual here to be one of the voice for everyone in the state of Michigan to be able to help the environment, help the equality of everything by bringing thousands and hundreds of new jobs to our state. I can't give you an exact number, but I want to bring back Hollywood. I want to be able to legalize marijuana. I want to be able to bring back and make sure that we have a strong city in Detroit. I want to be able to make sure that Flint's taken care of as well as the Upper Peninsula. All these things are things that we need to culminate together and see what the person that is just like you and just like everyone else in the state who has learned their responsibilities and who has learned their experiences in life to be able to be a good leader for tomorrow. That's why I believe in the part of the preamble of the Pledge of Allegiance, one nation under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. These are important things that we need to know. Give the freedoms to everybody in the state of Michigan. Keep our borders strong, keep our water safe, our soil clean, and our air fresh. That's why I'm standing before you and not giving up and not leaving just because I left the GOPs. It's because I want to be able to show that there are people out there who are just going to fight for every right you have in the state of Michigan. You can find me at evanspaceforgovernor.com, or you can find me at governorspace@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we'll close out with Mr. Schleiger. Thank you.
Well, first off, I'm the only candidate in here that wants to bring common sense to Lansing. I'm also the only candidate here that doesn't want to raise your taxes and won't raise your taxes to get the job done. First off, this state brings in over $131.7 billion in all our taxes combined. Our budget is only just under $57 billion. And people wonder where the rest of the money is. That's for your bonds and for your loans that the state takes out to do these jobs that they want to put out here. Well, my three main platforms are accountability, equality, and integrity, something that Lansing hasn't had in a long time. I'm also the only candidate that is bringing a bill with them to Lansing to hold our elected officials actually accountable, giving you the power, not the recall system, because we've already proven that is rigged against us. When Flint happened, they nearly had all the signatures to recall Rick Schneider. They changed the law. Because I was actually one of the candidates, I'm actually the very first candidate to declare for the state of Michigan's gubernatorial. When it came out in February of 2015, March 26th of 2015, I filed. Because Flint is my city. And I'm ready to do the work for the people. Oh, wow. Flint hit me hard, I'm sorry. I have friends and family there, and it's time that we do something for the people of Michigan. And I will be that governor for Michigan.
And how can the folks contact you, sir?
Well, my campaign manager hates it when I do this, but the easiest way to get a hold of me, because my name is hard to say and spell, is just Google Todd Schleiger. My last name is spelled S-C-H-L-E-I-G-E-R. If you Google that, that gives you access to every one of my contacts, Facebook, my website, Twitter, and Instagram. So, thank you for having me here.
Thank you, and again, on behalf of the In the Green program and the Washtenaw County Greens in this audience, if we could be so kind as to give these panelists. Thank you. And really thank